Tabs are incredibly useful Q widgets. Not only do they allow you to make your application more user-friendly, but they also save you valuable screen real estate. In a large application, it's only a matter of time before you run out of place to put your Q widgets on. Tabs solve that problem by providing you with separate views that you can use in any way you like. I'm sure that you've seen tabs used everywhere in applications, although funnily enough, the application that I always use to show you folks an example, the Qt Designer itself, doesn't seem to have any, at least not on this main screen, but still you've definitely seen them around, so I won't really bore you with the details as to how they work. Rather, let's add a QTab widget to our main window and then explore some properties that the QTab widget has that might prove to be useful to you when developing your application. If I just search for tab in the widget box on the left, there's the QTab widget. Let's just click it and drag and resize it a little bit to better fit our application. And while we're at it, why not just add the Q label, and also let's have a Q line edit that are not really going to do anything, just there for demonstrative purposes. Now, an important thing to note here is that the QTab widget itself is just a container. It contains several tabs, and by default we have 2 tabs, but of course we can add as many as we want or delete them or otherwise manipulate them. Think of it kind of like a Q menu bar having several Q menus, or a Q menu itself having several Q actions. Okay, so before we do anything else, let's preview our application, and this is also kind of going to give us a chance to peek at our Q toolbar as well. We go to Form and then Preview. So we have our Q menu bar at the top, our Q toolbar below, and our Q tab widget with 2 tabs. The first tab selected has the Q label and the Q line edit, and if I select the second tab, obviously those 2 Q widgets disappear. So let's close that. And the fun part about QTab widget starts with its properties. Let's select it. If I go to the right to our property editor and scroll to the QTab widget specific properties, so we don't need this, let's just scroll down a little bit. Let's not start from the top. The first thing I'm actually going to do is change this current tab text from tab 1 to something more meaningful, like general, for example, if this is, I don't know, like a settings. And then I'm going to select tab 2 on the screen here and change its text from tab 2 to, say, advanced. Now, as you probably noticed, or as you've definitely noticed, I guess, this changes this text of the tabs of each individual tab. Select general again, and now let's start from the top. The first parameter, the first property we have is the tab position. This property tells the QTab widget, and remember that's just a container, where to place these titles or captions or tabs, whatever you want to call them. Currently we have north selected, which means that they're at the top of the container itself. If I change it to, for example, south, we have them at the bottom. Let's put it back to north as that's more meaningful, and of course we have east or west, which would put text on the side. The second property is tab shape, and by default it's rounded, and you'll see why, because the only other option is triangular. In my opinion, that looks pretty bad, so I'm just going to put it back to rounded. You may like it, that's okay. The current index property denotes the currently selected tab. It's 0 base, so the first tab has an index of 0, the second tab has an index of 1, and so on and so forth. Since we only have 2 tabs, if I try to put number 2 here, which would mean that I want to select the third non-existing tab, hit enter, and it kicks me back to 0. However, if I put number 1, it's going to make this tab selected, the advanced tab. Let's put it back to 0. Skip icon size for now. Now, elide mode is a very interesting property. To fully demonstrate it, I'm actually going to change this current tab text to general application settings. Something that's very long. Now you can definitely see this ugliness and clipping and all that here, and these forced appearance of the scroll buttons to the right, which even if I turn off, this whole thing looks probably even uglier than before. Let's put them back on. And this is where elide mode kicks in. Right now we're in elide mode none, and if I change that from none to, say, elide right, you see here that Qt is basically stretching out our tabs as much as it can before finally saying, okay, well, you know what, I don't have any more room left, so I'm just going to elide or omit these letters. Similarly, we can change the elide right to elide left, and we have these three dots to the left, and of course, elide middle as well. Now what I'm going to do actually is going back to elide none and change this back to general. And obviously you're probably not going to have a tab with the title of general application settings, but you might just have a narrow tab container and you can't really fit any text, or some text that only has 10 or so characters either. Going back from elide mode down south, we've already seen what use scroll buttons does. We're going to skip document mode for now. And we have these two guys, tabs closable and movable, which are kind of cool. So if I make this tabs closable true, we see this X button appears to the right, and this will kind of allow us to close individual tabs, although it's not going to close them automatically. It's just going to send a signal that we need to handle in our code later on. But if I mark this movable as true, we can freely move our tabs around. For example, I can place this advanced tab to appear before the general tab, and if we had more, we can just place them in any order we want. Now we have some more options down below, like current tab name, tab icon, that we'll look at later. But for now, let's preview our application and move these tabs around. And you know what, while we're at it, one thing I neglected to mention is that we can also move our Qt toolbar around. I forgot to mention that in our last video. So let's just preview it and see how this works. Now let's start with the Qt toolbar first. So if I select these dots to the left, I can click and drag and make it appear to the left of the screen. You can see how our Qt tab widget kind of moved to the right to make room for our moved Qt toolbar. Let's put it back to where it belongs. Now obviously this is a property you can edit in the Qt toolbar's property editor, and many more options in the property editor for a Qt toolbar. I'm going to let you explore that on your own. But for now, if I click X here, nothing's going to happen. Like I said, a signal is being fired, but we're not handling it anyway. However, if I click on this advanced and drag it to the left, you can see that with this smooth animation, it appears to the left of general. But let's just put back things as they were, so have general first and then advanced later on. Let's close this main window now. And there you have it. This was a kind of a longish video too, but I'm sure it was not too hard. I mean, tabs are a very interesting feature that I use almost all of my applications, at least in some places. But enough of these like static widgets. Let's look at something to hold our data and display to the user on the screen, something like a Qt table widget.